Hey traders, this is Christian from Tribeca Trade Group, and it is Friday, June 20th, and this is your week recap. Well, first thing we'll talk about today is quarter end and the Russell rebalance. Those definitely had an impact on today's close. Just kind of thought that was the way that it was going to be. Of course, you never really know the direction unless you're trading on a portfolio desk at an institution. You don't know whether or not the funding side of the trade. What's known as kind of the leg of the trade is to buy or to sell. And clearly, there was a lot more to buy than to sell on that portion of the trade. Remember with the Russell rebalance, just a quick couple sentences here because it's what I used to do for a number of years. When I was trading on a Delta One desk, we used to do a lot of portfolio trading functions as well. Russell rebalance. So what are they doing? This is once a year. It's end of June. And this year it coincided with the quarter end, which also there seems to be some flows that happen then as well. But basically, what they're doing is they're just shifting around components within their indices. When people hear Russell, they always think it's the small caps like IWM, but it's actually a lot of different indices. It's for example IWF, IWO. That's small cap growth as well as value. It's also IWD, which is D as in dog, which is large cap as well. So there's a lot of large cap also that gets rebalanced. They actually manage a lot of the indices, just like S&P and Nasdaq. The Russell, they're known for the small caps, but there's a lot of assets tracking some of their larger cap growth and value indices as well. So that's the reason, just giving you a little background and the reason for this. And you just always want to be aware of what happens on this day, because if you look at a lot of the single stocks, they really got whipped around. Of course, I'm looking at the overall average. So that's just a quick minute on that. I don't want to. And the other thing that you could take away from this is when you're going over charts, if a lot of you are looking at the technicals and so forth in your charts this weekend, you're going to notice every name had big volume. So I wouldn't necessarily jump to conclusions and say, oh geez, look at the breakout in this name and the volume. The ones that went down too are also going to have big volume. Literally, it's every name. So don't get confused by that, and don't necessarily draw a lot of conclusions just because you saw a lot of volume. It just happens every year, and the Russell rebalances occurs just once. Just once, during the year, and again, that's the end of June. All right, so let's get into the other price action. But this was a great way to end the month if you were position long. Just really nice. Obviously, just icing on the cake, I would say, for this week. What's interesting is if you go into the performance, and let me just shoot over to the daily chart. But if you look at the performance for the week, you kind of forget what happened in the beginning of the week. But the S&P actually finished down for the week, believe it or not. So here was the performance. Somewhere I've got the performance up. Let's go to my macro tab here. But SPY's actually finished down. I'll just enlarge this a little bit so you can see what I'm talking about. The SPY's finished down 30 basis points for the week. And what was interesting, I always like to talk about the bad first and then talk about the good. But the Qs, there was some profit taking. Remember that the Qs had a big week the prior week. So if we we'll go through the technicals as I talk about the performance. But remember back here we kind of ripped up, right? So I would call this digestion. A bigger performance back up, and kind of leaves the door open for next week. For what we could see. Remember, sometimes it just fluctuates between week to week. Also notice that we kind of came back to the top of value. We are going to have whole new value areas for the month of July. So it looks like Qs are going to open up in value. Let me just go back to the S&P. That's going to open up close to the top of value. And then what was really kind of the really nice surprise is IWM, and that really ramped up the last couple days. Remember, it looked pretty nasty earlier in the week because today's Friday, Thursday, Tuesday. So this was Monday. I think we had a big down day in IWM, but it came roaring back today. And the performance for IWM this week was up 1%. Also, the transports, which were really lagging, were getting kind of hit over the head. I think FedEx helped in that space. And then just looking at international, both of those areas did okay this week. They finished up slightly. Bonds continue to show a bid this week. They were up 1%, and gold, after a monster week the week before, I think was up 4.3% the week before, finished up 90 basis points. And if we move over to just to kind of continue with the performance, just to review for the week, really interesting. The semis were up 2.8%. A mix, right? Kind of a mix of things that went pretty well. Metals and mining, which we took advantage. We saw a lot of call activity. I will say this: I always will have a love-hate relationship with option activity, because I do think from time to time people give it too much weight. There's a lot of traders on Twitter who are constantly um, tweeting about option activity, and sometimes you will go through weeks, believe it or not, if you look at the winners and losers, sometimes it works out to be about 50% winners and losers. This week, however, I thought it really gave some good signals. We saw repeat call buying, which started last week out in January calls in XME, and then we saw some July calls. So that group, which is metals and mining, silver stocks in there, sorry, not silver, steel stocks in there, finished up 2.3%. The banks, after the stress test, finished up 2.6%. So, here's what both of those groups look like. I'll kind of just show you. I like what this XME is doing. I took some targets today with it up 1.7% in closing on the week high. This was a trade that I started towards the end of last week and then added in a bigger size this week. So XME still underneath the 200-day moving average, but that option activity giving us a really good signal. The banks, right? I actually had the banks. I was trying to remember if, because last weekend was a long time ago, but I actually said with the banks, wouldn't it be interesting if they could get going? And I didn't know, I did not know that it was going to be the stress test and them announcing huge buybacks that would actually get them going. But it just showed a little bit, last week and just during the month, that it had been trying to kind of break higher, this XLF. The name that I'm long is Alley Financial, which has done very well, and I finally got that breakout. This is coming out of a pretty major coil. So again, I always was considering, I've been holding this trade for now about 3 weeks. So I do like to get that one target in, especially when you've been holding something for that long. Also, the beauty of this is, having the right duration on in my option trade, right? Because if I was in July calls, I would have gotten smoked in this thing, but I'm in January. So, that's the beauty of kind of stretching your option trades out a little bit further. And now this trade is starting to earn some dividends for me, I should say. But I was able to take a target in this one. But yeah, I mean, you kind of move back here, and we're almost there's going to be some history back here, but this was really tightly coiled, so hopefully this will start to move up a bit. Speaking of coiled, there was another name that I've been in for a little bit. I took a target in this one, but about a week ago, this is RPD, which also had a really nice day. Remember, also this was also coiled. And look at again, big volume for the Russell rebalance today. But hopefully this can continue to go. Kind of gave a check back here to the back to the support. I did not add any onto here, but hindsight 2020 would have been a good add. But this looks pretty good, RPD as well. So I talked about financials. We talked about the metals and mining space. Where's my whoops. Here we go. What else performed pretty well? Energy names were up 2.5% as well. Materials, gold miners continued with their move last week. The Chinese internets came alive a little bit this week, up 1.3%. Interesting, what was the underperformers for the week? It was a lot of the defensives. So a lot of the stronger performers for the last few months and even for the year, REITs, utilities, healthcare, which I don't think healthcare hasn't been one of the best performers of the year. But then also look at the FANG stocks. and software names were down. So again, this kind of felt like with the Russell rebel, sell the winners and buy some of the losers for the year, or buy some of the underperformers for the year. That's kind of what I would say the week's performance was a little bit. I don't think you can classify it totally like that, but I think that's very typical when you have an index rebalance. Remember, again, when they're shuffling around the index components, they're essentially putting them back to their benchmark weights. So they are buying some of those underperformers and selling some of the winners. Yeah, I mean, and also interesting was the FANG stocks. They haven't been, other than really nice performance in the beginning of the year, they've kind of been lame ducks. And I've been saying that for a while. And the reason why I'm so adamant about pointing that out is because I know a lot of traders, especially the retail traders on Twitter, are so focused on the FANG stocks. And I hope to provide a little bit of my perspective to say, hey, you don't always need to trade the same stocks. Right? It's good to have a focus list and to be updating that focus list regularly, but you don't want to just trade the same stocks if they're bogged down and not breaking out to 52-week highs like the majority of the market is, right? So it is what it is. Don't hate me because I'm saying that, but I just try to be very realistic about the market and just take it for what it is. And if it's going to be something like the defensives that are all breaking out, or software names, which I think you could see they underperformed for the week. You have to be able to be flexible to counter. To be able to take advantage of new shifts in the market. And that's what we do at Tribeca Trade Group, is we want to make sure, or help traders make sure that they're finding what's trending, and not getting bogged down into names that are not performing very well. International names for the week. I mentioned that the overall those indices looked pretty good. They did okay. I think they actually outperformed U.S. indices, right? So SPY was down 0.3%, and both IFA, which is international developed markets, and emerging markets were both positive for the week. Let's just take a look at those two charts. I haven't done anything in EEM in a while. I was long a swing for a while, back here, and then once it broke down, I got out of it. I'm not really convinced with the EEM chart. It's not jumping off the page to me. IFA, let's take a look at this as well. This actually doesn't look bad. It is above the 50-day moving average. And I think if you look at this, when you strip out the currency, it might be a little bit different. A little bit different. There was a very big inflow into the France ETF. Which was from Thursday's price action, and the inflow happened on Friday. So interesting. Somebody put in a little bit over $100 million into that ETF on Thursday, thinking French securities might do pretty well. Notice there's a VPOC up here in the EWQ ETF. All right, going back, just finishing up here with the performance. The Greece ETF did pretty good. Turkey, New Zealand's up there, Thailand. So kind of again a mixed bag. Norway was down 3.5%. Portugal was down. So yeah, depending on what area you were in, you either did very well or a little bit poorly. Interesting, Brazil was down 1.5% for the week. I traded a little bit of EWZ intraday yesterday and for a day trade, and did pretty nicely on it. I'm not convinced yet that this is going to break out, but I would say this is an area to keep on your list. EWZ, again, if you look at this, so one thing that you notice, right, looking at this weekly chart, it's pretty sideways, but you could trade it versus the support 43.25 on the weekly chart, and I think you're looking pretty good. Let's go over a couple of the trades that I was looking at today, or option activity that we saw today. Let's go over. This is something that when I sent out our midday video yesterday. And by the way, if you are a member of Tribeca Trade Group, or if you're not a member of Tribeca Trade Group, one of the things that we're beginning to do is midday videos, where I will recap the price action. Just a 5 or 10 minute video that could get you up to speed on the day's option activity, as well as what the market moves and what my market view is for the day. So please check us out, tribecatrategroup.com. You can join, you can check it out for a month, and I think you'll really get some value out of it. I do not charge a ton of money per month per membership. So that's this is SUM. This is a name that saw repeat option activity this week. Summit Materials. I think this thing looks wonderful on a weekly chart. 1570. It did take out a virgin point of control. This is what we talked about in the video on Wednesday. So, short-term target achieved. And if you're not in this name, you might see a little bit of digestion here, right? I was talking about this a good example of the purple lines on my charts, virgin point of controls, snap. Again, the theory behind this is that a high level of volume that has previously occurred, which is right in the middle of my screen, once price returns to that, right, and which it had never returned to it before, it will act as, number one, a price magnet, right? So price will seek it out, and then once it's taken out, more often than not, you see digestion, and you could see what Snap did. So what to do if you missed this move in Snap, right? Which we saw a lot of option activity. There was some more option activity today. What to do with this? And this is where the virgin point of controls can really help in the value areas. Is that I would wait. I would wait until it takes this out. And that level is right around, if you want to be safe, maybe 15. Because look at all the upside VPOCs up here, 18. That's where it could really get fun. But notice the last time it took one of these out, it digested for about a month, right? And it never got over there until here. So you could also wait until it comes down a little bit more. The new value area for the month of July is 1355. So you could also take that perspective and say, hey, if it comes down to that bottom of value, if it checks back, you could be a buyer there, or you could wait until it breaks out with that new value area is going to be 15. Again, very easy way to kind of think about trading and forget about emotion. Just use the lines on the screen. All right, so that's a couple names. Also, I saw a little bit of Shack, which performed very well, was up 3.2% today. This name it made, I think is this an all-time? No, I don't think it's an all-time high. Is it? No. But it is a 52-week high. Remember when it went public, it went nuts, up to 96. But look at Shack break out. Personally love Shake Shack. But maybe I'll go there this weekend. Who knows? Shack that looking pretty good. Sticking with the S's. Also, another, what a great combination this would be. A little bit of Sam Summer beer and Shake Shack. If I'm not getting you hungry, you could think about Beyond Burger or something. Haha. So Sam Adams, making is this an all-time high for Sam Adams? It looks like an all-time high for Sam Adams. Love Sam Adams beer, and I will be having one shortly. What else? So we talked about a couple of those names. Also, two other names, and then we'll call it a weekend. Something a little bit different. I covered this in the video for the midday session. Talked about this STNG. This thing almost took out the version point of control that's right here. Looking for a longer, so you have an upside target to maybe take profits there, which we darn near got to. And then on the weekly chart, look at this. You've got one up there at 38. That would be a nice trade. I did get long this name today. STNG, Scorpio Tankers. Finally, just a couple names, considering that the software names were absent this week, which again I think is perfectly normal. If you're worried about those names and if you got position in those names, they got a little bit overcrowded, right? Everybody talking about them on Twitter, whereas 6 months ago, a year ago, when we were trading really, in the heart of those names, nobody knew what Coupa Software was, nobody knew what MDB was, nobody, so on and so forth. So, sorry, someone is just texting me, but yeah, and then if you go into names like PayPal, I sent out a trade idea for PayPal, which I like PayPal when it, strong name in an uptrend coming into a little bit of support here at the 50-day moving average. So just to leave it there for the week. But there's, I think, a number of trades that are looking like this. Also, Facebook. I think Facebook is trying to actually break this trend. Right. I mentioned the FANG stocks, not the best performers recently, but Facebook is trying to break this downtrend line. And I did structure a trade call spread. And I was able to take a target at this right at the end of the day. All right, guys. So I will leave it there. Again, video always for information purposes only. Thank you for watching. Thanks for tuning in. If would love to have you guys try it out to be a member. If you're not already a member and watching this video, trybackatradegroup.com. Have a great weekend, everybody, and see you guys on Monday.